Hello and welcome to 9394, a music podcast with me, Travis. How are you? I hope you're doing good. I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I got this good omen in my life recently. I pulled in to my driveway pretty late at night the other night on the weekend. And when I pulled in, there was this really fat possum hanging out in my driveway, and he very slowly turned and saw me and kind of scuttled his pudgy butt across the driveway until he got to the fence. And I was like, oh fuck, what are you going to do now, big fella? And he just contorted his little body, pudgy body, into this, thing. Just wiggled quickly underneath the fence and was off. And since I have dogs, I seldom get to see possums. They scare them off as soon as I bring them out into the yard, so I don't really get to see them very often. So seeing one to me is seeing some sort of fairy folk or something. I know that seems like a little much, but I really like them. And I really like urban fauna generally. Big shout out to all the urban fauna that bring some nature into our lives. I love squirrels, raccoons, possums, yes. Fucking pigeons, rats. I'll give it up to rats. Rats are cool. Not in the house, obviously. No one wants that shit. Unless they're pets, which is very cool. Skunks, so long as you're not spraying. All these animals, they're pretty cool. Finches. We like birds around here too, right? Birds like finches and what are there? Seagulls, if you're in Michigan? I don't know. I appreciate the nature that has found a way to live among us and thrive. Raccoons, I'm looking at you especially. Deer, what the fuck? We need a little bit less of you. No offense. You're still cool. But seriously. All right. So that's enough rambling for me today. I've got my buddy Dustin Lince back on the show, and I am so stoked. He is such a fun guy. I had a really great time with this episode with him in particular. We got into some local music lore, as well as, of course, the album that we're here to talk about today, which is Chrome from the almighty Catherine Wheel. Super underappreciated band. Catherine Wheel are like godfathers of the genre of alternative rock, and they just don't get the play that they deserve, I don't think. So we had a good time talking about them at length. Check it out.
I see, feel how much I feel. Just this one side.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, I can hear and see you this time.
That's the way it works. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, no. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Love the shirt.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.
Britney Spears shirt. That's fantastic. And that image of her, God, that's just the 90s incarnate.
I think my daughter's got it for me because I wear a lot of band shirts still, even though I'm 48. I think they got it for me just as a joke and didn't think I'd wear it. And it's part of the regular rotation now. I wear it to their orientation and stuff. It's all good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How you doing, man? How you been?
I'm doing good. Busy, but yeah, doing good. Yeah. Doing good. Really busy.
Good.
Yeah.
Should we jump into it?
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming. I'm glad that we're doing this.
Yeah,
I totally get you're a busy man. You're a single father. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time this morning to do it with me.
Yeah, no problem. My kids are gone. So my oldest is 19, so she's gone all the time anyways. But
yeah,
luckily my youngest took off for the weekend and stuff.
Right on. And which album are you here to talk about, Dustin?
Catherine Wheel's Chrome.
Very nice. On CD in your hand. Is that like one you've had for years, or you had to rebuy it at some point?
No, yeah, I rebought it. Like, I think when the pandemic started, like, maybe right before when I started doing the vinyl collection, I started to just redo all the CDs from my past.
Yeah.
Just to get those back in the collection.
Yeah, I talked about that in a recent episode. Like I unloaded all that shit when I moved, and now it's like, oh,
Yeah.
now I want it all back.
Yeah, and all during the pandemic, I spent so much money during the, like, especially during the lockdown at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like any album I can think of that I wanted that's out on vinyl, I bought. And any album that I can think of on CD, I ended up getting. And now I just have way too much, but I have everything I want.
Everyone had to find a way to get through that time period somehow. You found a pretty productive way, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, for sure.
This is your second time on the show, so I won't ask how you and I know each other. I'll ask you a completely different, unrelated question.
Sounds good.
I'm a big movie nerd.
Okay.
What's the last good movie you watched?
Man. So every Christmas, I take my kids out. It's a tradition from my dad before he passed, before he got sick every year. He would take us while we were growing up to the movies on Christmas. Mm-hmm. So every Christmas I take my daughters to the movies, and I got 2 daughters, so it's always something not great, I guess. But it was great. We saw Violent Night. Okay. And it was fucking amazing.
Still haven't seen that. I'm gonna watch it this coming Christmas season.
Fucking amazing. Not gonna ruin it for you.
Please don't.
But it had just the amount of killing, of gratuitous violence, and just the amount of cheesy Christmas magic. It was great.
It's a fine balance to strike.
Right, yeah, it was great. It was a great movie. So I'd have to say that. I mean, since you put me on the spot,
Yeah.
I really haven't watched a lot of recent movies, a lot. It's all just old stuff. How many times have I watched Clerks? A shitload.
Did you watch Clerks 3?
I haven't seen Clerks 3 yet.
Did you see Clerks 2?
I did.
Okay.
I liked it. I enjoyed it for what it is.
Clerks 3 is it's a little darker. It's a little more adult and serious, but I loved it.
I would like it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it today on this lazy Sunday before band practice. Yeah.
That's a good idea. And yeah, your band, this is Red, White, and Booze that you're getting together
Big
with?
Ass Ham. Big Ass Ham.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big Ass Ham.
Yeah.
Staying true to the music making roots. I love it. I try to get together with our buddy, Christian Haraminski. He and I started trying to get together to let's just jam something. Let's just get together. Let's get together once every week or two. And it's just been nope. It's so hard just to get together.
It's hard to get all 4 of us together every week, but we've been having a lot of luck. We've been having a lot of interest in wanting to do it and
it's great.
Keep it going. I think it was a pandemic. It was we still want to play music after all that stuff ended. It's now we're getting old. We don't want to meet new people. And why don't we just play with the people we played with 20 years ago? So
that's awesome.
I think a lot of bands are doing that now. A lot of bands from our age are getting back together, or they're starting bands with people from their old bands, and it's just put out a lot of good local music lately.
That's awesome. Yeah, I envy you. It's definitely hard to make the time, but once you get the ball rolling and get the routine going, you guys clearly have, it gets a little bit easier.
I tell everybody's busy and stuff like that, but I say dude, if I can do it, I mean, I'm a single dad with 2 teenage daughters and a full-time business, and not that I'm busier than anybody else or I'm better than anybody,
but
or
you're
can
busy.
manage time better. But
but
if I can do it, anybody can put together 2 hours a week.
It takes the recurring commitment. It's quitting smoking. You have to keep on doing it. Just keep doing it.
Right.
What if I got show me? Wanna be unseen? Show me deep disguise. A deep disguise. 5 years of nothing good. Still screaming. Shout this secret song. Deep, distant, and cold.
So let's get into Captain Reel's Chrome.
Yeah, for sure.
Fucking classic shoegaze seminal album. How did you get into it?
Well, more just Catherine Reel in general. I had a buddy back in high school. His name was Jim Hamilton, and he was just the stereotypical, alternative, just cool guy. Just had the long greasy hair and like found the cool cardigans at like Value Village. That like, how did this kid find all these things and I can't find shit when I go there? And like, you know, even like the cheerleader girls thought this kid was like cute and stuff. He just knew everything, knew about all these bands, carried around his acoustic guitar everywhere, played Disarm all the time, freaking played just like Lemonheads all the time, just anything like. And just we would hang out at his house and he'd play acoustic guitar and he'd always be watching like VHS tape, like 120 minutes and Alternative Nation, stuff like that. And that's all the kid would watch. Like we'd go over there and it'd just be like tapes of like 120 minutes or like Alternative Nation, and the Black Metallic video came on. And from their first album, from Ferment. I loved it. You know, I was into The Cure and the Smiths and like, you know, shoegazy stuff back then and like, you know, Failure and stuff like that. And like, I loved it and I never heard them before. So I got that album and, you know, loved that one. You know, I Want to Touch You, I got into that song really well. And then the next year they came out with Chrome. We were sitting around and I think we were probably watching Alternative Nation or 120 minutes and the video for Crank came on. And that's, you know, so we're like, all right, well, went to Wazoo's the next day in Ann Arbor and went and picked up Chrome.
Love that place. And that's definitely how you learned that new albums were coming out at the time. Like you wouldn't get any sort of notice in advance. It'd be like, oh shit, there's a single. I guess I need to go out and get that.
Yeah, I think it was like the debut on it because they hyped it up pretty much. Like it was their single from that album and they were coming off some momentum from Black Metallic and stuff and from Ferment.
Yeah, I think there was some expectation, some hope that this album would really take off. And it did in England.
It was grunge time,
Right. It did take off some places. Not huge in America. I went through a similar thing listening to Black Metallic. My older brother, who's about your age, he got into Catherine Wheel from Black Metallic and he bought the cassette of Ferment. So I was growing up listening to that. Then he bought the cassette of Chrome. So it was one of those albums that I never had to buy when I lived at home because I could just borrow his copy. Then once I got older, I ended up, you know, it was one of the first things I remember downloading from Napster or whatever once I got a little older. You have a specific song that is your favorite song on this album?
Number 5, Pain. I mean, just being the emo guy I am.
Oh, it's so emo.
But it's so good. Like at the end, you get like goosebumps and chills. Like when it goes through that haunting, like do part, like that part, like it just gets you, and then it breaks into like the distortion, and then back into the. Ah, dude, it's so good. You get like goosebumps and like kind of feeling woozy and stuff when you listen to it, especially under, you know, some substances that we used to take when we listened to this album.
For sure. Yeah, it's goosebumpy. That's the word, man. It's very much goosebump inducing. I chose that not as my favorite song, but as my underrated song.
It's so good.
Returning to this album, listening to it this time, I was like, shit, this is probably... I mean, I have a favorite, but Pain might be the best song on the album. And it's so long, it doesn't take any fucking...
It is, very long.
It's got no bones about being almost 8 minutes long, and it doesn't feel...
But you don't notice it.
Right.
You don't even notice it, especially in the end during the breakdown part. And like at the end, just from the beginning, it starts off that little, you know, him doing the do part, and it's awesome. Such a great song.
Yeah, I was listening to it. I'm like, man, why didn't they make this a single? Then I looked at the length of the song.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I guess that's why. Because it really, in some ways, is one of the catchier songs on the album. Yeah, I love it so much.
Very catchy, and it sticks to like, because this album kind of veers off a little, and I think because it was during the grunge time and they wanted it to be more easily accessible, and it like, this album kind of veers off the shoegazy part of it, you know,
a little bit,
way more from Ferment.
Yeah,
the song kind of sticks, kind of that format, especially that swirling like guitar, you know, noise that they have with all the layering and the like
wall of sound,
the thickness.
Yeah, it's so thick. That's the word. There's so much layered guitar on the album generally, but that song in particular, you really get like the full frontal assault of these gentle waves of like pre-emo core.
So good. I read about it, and fans like Death Cab for Cutie like told them that they wouldn't even exist without this album, you know. So it did kind of lay a lot of like, I really got into like Deftones, you know, back in the like late 90s, and they said that like Captain Wheel is one of their favorite bands, and like Interpol and stuff like that, bands you wouldn't even think of, you know, just like comes from this tree of this band that was just doing this grungy shoegaze.
Yeah, this album didn't take off and the band didn't take off quite the way that it seemed like they could have or should have, but they certainly left a lasting mark with a lot of musicians, because I've seen that too, that a lot of bands I like and a lot of musicians I like will name check them as an influence.
Well, I'm sure a lot of later Radiohead stuff probably, like, because they were kind of contemporary, but I'm sure, like, from this album, you know, they took off once they got away from the organic sound, you know. I'm sure Radiohead took a lot from Catherine Wheel and stuff also.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they're one of those bands that just kind of like, they were a seed band, you know? Laying seeds. Although Pain, well, I acknowledge, is probably the best song on the album. I still have to say that my favorite song on the album is still Crank. I hear that song and I feel like I'm 13. You know, it sounds like being 13 or 14 years old.
And it does. It reminds me of being in Jim Hamilton's bedroom, listening to British music, you know?
Yeah, it takes you right back, because for a long time, I wasn't listening to this album regularly. I listened to it regularly as a kid, and then I kind of dropped out of it for quite a few years, like a decade at least. But during that time, I never stopped listening to Crank. That would always be like on mixes that I'd make for myself and that kind of stuff. So
it's catchy.
Yeah, it's catchy, but it's not catchy like in a vapid or like remotely like sugary kind of way. It's very just well structured. You know what I mean? It's just like a really well written song.
I agree.
Do you have any other memories tied to this album?
Just from, you know, my group of friends, you know, my two best friends from back in my high school days, and just getting out of high school and stuff, and getting your first apartment, and, you know, taking substances. And this was an album we listened to like a lot, you know, my friends Don and Jeremy, who I miss a lot, you know, just the people that you, like you said, it brings you, you know, you listen, it brings you back to like you're 13, you know. I listen to this album, it brings me back to like looking at a stucco ceiling and it melting, you know, and like, and even though I'm 48 and I don't indulge in stuff like that anymore, and I appreciate the music now for what it is than for the visual and mental enhancement, but like I still love it, but it still reminds reminds me of those times, and my buddies Don and Jeremy for sure.
Yeah, I've never done hallucinogens to this album, but I could see where it'd be great for that because it creates such a landscape in your mind. Like, it's so rich.
Very thick.
Yeah, it's so rich.
And now being the age I am, and now you hear all the stuff that you really wouldn't, like the swirling guitar part and Pain, that stuff stands out to you that really wouldn't stand out to you if that wasn't part of your experience in the past.
And also at that age, a lot of times stuff that was unique or trend setting would feel like you just kind of accept it as a teenager. You just kind of accept it as, well, this is what they did. This is how it is. And like maybe later you listen to it again, you're like, oh, this is actually really unique. And I could see where other bands were kind of lifting off this a little bit.
Yeah, like when I got into Deftones, like it made me like, even though I really wasn't into bands like the Deftones, it made me more accessible because of bands like Catherine Wheel and Hum and stuff like that. And those are like the bands that, even though they're more metally, those are them and Depeche Mode are like the bands that the Deftones pretty much, they're the three bands that why they exist,
That's cool. Do you have an underrated song from this album?
I mean, yeah, probably, Chrome. I never really gave it much because of the choppiness at the beginning, but the ending just killer.
Yeah.
And the amount of, thickness and just heaviness and just the chords that they're just tearing through at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I like that song a lot. Obviously, I like the album, so I'm going to like that song too. But you'd almost expect the title track to be one of the more accessible songs, but that's not. It's kind of crunchy and kind of aggressive by their standards.
Yeah. That's what I think was the sign of the times. Like from Ferment to Chrome was them trying to be more accessible to the American crowd because shoegaze never caught on in America. Even though they were thicker, they were heavier than most English contemporaries and more on the rock side. I think that's why they tried to make it a little bit more accessible and less shoegazy.
Yeah, it's very much a guitarist's kind of album.
Yeah.
I feel like. Oh, and also, I didn't realize that Rob Dickinson and Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden are cousins.
Yeah, cousins. Yeah.
That's so funny. Just never would have guessed. I mean, just one of those random things.
And I was looking at stuff, doing research and stuff, and they look exactly alike. Like, you can tell, like, the family lineage. Like, I mean, Bruce is a bit older, but, like, they have the same, like, British straight ahead, haircut, just like the Caesar, I guess that is.
I think in 98 or so, everyone had the Caesar. Thank you, George Clooney. I certainly did. And also, it's funny to me that, they got all of this influence and they became such an important band to so many people. But Rob Dickinson, he left the life. He runs he did some sort of Porsche restoration company or something.
Yeah, like an auto detailing, like Porsche dealership or some shit.
I think that's kind of cool. Like, I mean, I've mentioned this on the show before that Greg Dooley, he took his money from his bands and became like a bar owner and stuff.
Yeah.
It's savvy, I think, for someone to be on top of the world or as close as on top of the world as you can be in the alternative scene. And rather than being like, hey, this is going to be me for the rest of my life, be like, okay, I'm going to take this money while I've got it and invest. And that way. And while Greg Dooley was able to just kind of keep on doing what he's doing because of those bars, obviously Rob Dickinson doesn't look like they're getting back together anytime soon. Although they did release an EP recently, of material from this era, some rare demos and stuff, which is the first release they put out in a long time.
Yeah. I think the last studio album was 2000 or something. And that was way, way different. There was acoustic songs and some keyboards on it. And I kind of checked out after, the album after Chrome.
Happy Days.
Happy Days. Yeah, I liked a couple songs on there and kind of checked out. And then, the Screamo days happened.
Yeah, and we were listening to different stuff, right? Well, that brings me to my next question then. For you, what is the weakest song on this album?
I'd probably the last three in general. But if you want to do maybe Show Me Mary, the radio hit.
Mary stood
you know, you have this thick, heavy, shoegazy emo album, then you have this la-la-di-da, like poppy, just, I don't want to listen to that shit. If I wanted, I'd listen to the Beatles, and I'd rather play in traffic and get hit by a bus than listen to the Beatles.
I love the Beatles, but I fucking strongly dislike Show Me Mary. I've always strongly disliked Show Me Mary. I'm grateful that it's the last song on the album so I could just quickly run to the CD player and hit stop. It sounds like the fucking Friends theme song. It's everything but the claps.
It does. I could do with the do-do-do's and Pain because, dude, that's works. Like, do-do-do's are like haunting.
Yeah.
La-di-da's like, I don't want to listen to that.
The whole vibe of that song, it's like they released the album and then someone went, oh shit, no one's going to like this. We better put a single out that sounds like the fucking Spin Doctors. Yeah. And it's completely incongruous with the rest of the album, and it is the direction that they went in. Like, from that point on, I tried listening to Happy Days. I tried listening to Wishville. There's like one or two songs on each album that I'm like, this one's pretty good. But most of it sounds a lot like Show Me Mary, which was the wrong direction to go in. Like, they had these two incredible albums in Ferment and Chrome, and then just like, it seems like they started trying to reach for attention or something, or like they got like a new manager. I don't know, but it was a mistake in my opinion.
I agree.
I kind of had a feeling you might say the same thing.
And it's not because it's a radio hit song. I'm not that cynical anymore, you know, whatever. The most music I listen to right now is pop, Post Malone, stuff like that. But like, you know, I just can't.
No, I feel you. Yeah, Crank was the other big single, and that's my favorite.
I love it.
But yeah, Show Me Mary just sounds like a different band. Like a different band, a different song from a different album. It just doesn't fit, and it's not my style. But I'm very thankful for the rest of the album. And you're right, before that even, it kind of starts to be like Half-Life, for instance.
Yeah, that's like a Bruno Mars song. Like, I just like, it's all like funky, like, come on.
It kind of like blends into everything too. Like, it doesn't stand out. Like, you know, like I was looking at the track list before talking to you today, and I'm like looking at all the songs, like, yeah, I like that song. That song's great. And I looked at Half-Life, like, what's the fuck? What's that one sound like again? Like, I couldn't even remember because it's just kind of like, it's one of those. It's not bad, but it's no Show Me Mary. I'll give it that.
No, it's better than that, but you know.
For sure. You never saw them live, did you?
No. By the time, like, no, unfortunately.
It's one of those English bands that didn't really take off here. I don't know anybody that I know that has seen them, but they do seem like, you know, if he can give up his time at the Porsche dealership or whatever, it does seem like they would be prime right about now to kind of come back and do a tour and do that kind of thing that a lot of bands are doing right now. Like you were saying earlier, kind of reunite. I'd love to see it.
You would think so. Yeah, me too. It would definitely be a show that I would definitely make sure that I would go to.
Yeah, unless it was in England or something, that would suck.
Yeah. I mean, it'd have to be near me because I I just listened to your last episode and you were talking about how hard it is for you to get the shows and stuff. You know, if it's not number one on the weekend, or if it's not like close to me, I ain't going.
I hate to say it because I mean, like, I've gotten to that point kicking and screaming. There's been multiple shows like that I've bought tickets for and on a weekday, and then the actual night comes around, I'm like, I had tickets to see Lemonheads play Shame About Ray live, and that's like one of my favorite all-time albums. And the guy I was going to go see it with dropped out at the last second, and I was just like kind of under the weather. I'm just like,
it would have been a shit show anyways, honestly.
I've heard some things.
It would have been a shit show. I love him. It's the Shame About Ray is one of my all-time favorites too. You know, top 3, you know, but like,
love it.
It would have been a shit show.
That was partly why I was okay kind of bowing out. But it's like, all right, after this past week where I didn't go to the Broken Social Scene show, I was like, all right, no more. I'm just not going to buy tickets unless it's on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, because otherwise I know I'm just not going to go. And even if it's on a Sunday, maybe not.
I can't do it. I'm up too early. I have to get my daughter to school. Like, it's cross country season. You know, we're busy, man.
Yeah, I get up at 5:30 in the morning for work. I'm just like, I'm not staying out till midnight the night before. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Old, man. We're getting old. I don't mind it. It's just, it takes some getting used to, I guess.
It takes a lot of motivation.
Yeah, to get out there and get off the couch. Once I get home, I'm pretty much home.
There's a shark-shaped fin in the water of my dreams. Alligator screams from the depths there. Swim with you there. swim with you there. Yeah.
You know, like I said, it just reminds me of my buddies, you know, Jim Hamilton hanging out in his bedroom, and then my better buddies, Jeremy Dean and Don Hammond. The life with them, you know, in our early 20s and just our pre-adult life, you know, they were like the two most important people to me, and just, you know, just hanging out and just, you know, like you said, it brings back memories. And now that we're getting old, you know, you cherish that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And music is kind of like, well, it's like smelling something, you know what I mean? How it can like bring you right back in your mind.
Yeah.
It just serves as this memory trigger. And I think that, you know, that's what nostalgia does. But when you're dealing with an album like Chrome, you get this double whammy of the nostalgia and an incredible album plus one bad song.
Yeah, that makes it better. You know, we're not doing the things we were doing back in the day, but it stands the test of time. Sure. You know, it's not like 311.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff from that era that like I try to listen to now. I was a Real Big Fish fan. I try to listen to that now. Like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, how did I get on board with this? And then there's stuff like this where it's like, I'm never going to grow out of this album or Ferment. They're both ones I regularly return to, especially as I've gotten older. Well, I kind of stopped for quite a few years in my, like you said, like the screamo kind of hardcore days of my life. Once I kind of got over that phase and got into my 30s, I was like, okay, I'm returning to my roots. And this was very much one of those albums for me.
Yeah, I still went back to it just, you know, because, you know, when I did listen to a lot of like, you know, the screamo things, you know, you did hear some similarities in that. Like, I'm really big into Mineral. Yeah. On their third song on Power of Failing, the song's slower when they're really slow, and then they do the breakdown, and then the guitar squealing, and then just they get heavy again. And I was always like, man, that sounds so much like Pain. And then I got the album, The Power of Failing, and I read through all the linear notes, and like, he totally admits it. He's like, yeah, we were listening to a lot of Chrome in the studio, and we ripped that part off. You know, so like,
that's cool that they included that. You gave the shout out.
Yeah.
And it's cool you recognize that.
Yeah,
but
it did. Yeah.
That says everything. That brings us full circle to the beginning of this conversation, that this is one of those bands that bands love. Yeah. And so whether anyone listening, whether you were a fan or not, it's worth digging into to kind of get those. It's like a living fossil.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of.
That's what music does, man. That's why it's important to so many people. And like, even if it's not in the language that you speak, you still nod your head to it, because that's what it is. It's life. Yeah. It brings back, you know, everything.
For sure. So speaking of music, I'm going to get us into our final questions of the day. Usually I kind of ask questions related to the 90s, but you and I are both a couple of scenesters, especially you. Yes. You still are making music and in the scene and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about this.
Okay.
I thought about the question myself this morning. I ended up coming up with my answers in like a minute. Okay. So I imagine you probably could too. I want to go through 3, 2, 1. So you'll talk about your third and I'll talk about my third. You talk about your second. I'll talk about my second. I'll talk about your first. I'll talk about my first. Top 3 local bands.
Of all time? Ever? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh.
I almost sent you the question in advance, but I didn't want you to like wrestle with it and like not be able to come up, you know what I mean? Like, like just come up with like 20 things. So I thought like if I ask you kind of on the spot, the first 3 that come to your mind are probably the main ones. That's what I ended up thinking. It was like, I thought of like 4 or 5 bands, but really it's like, it's 3.
My gosh. I'm just trying to think of how to rank them. You know, I mean, like.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you my number 3 and you kind of think about while I'm talking?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So for my number 3, I came up with the band Chore from Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I remember them.
Remember them?
Yeah,
they're
I
fucking great.
Played them in a lot of Ypsilanti basements. Song.
You saw them?
Oh yeah, a lot of Ypsilanti basements. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very envious. I am very envious because that first 6-song EP came out in 1994, and they had like just copies of that lying around Ann Arbor, like for free. And I stumbled across it as a 14-year-old, but you would have been 19, so you would have been like, or 18, or so you would have been like more active in the scene. For me, it was just something I'm like, what is this? I'll take it home and listen to it. I end up being obsessed with that 6-song EP forever, and they became like one of those bands I would chase after. And there's another band called Chore from Canada, which is like a screamo or like emo band, which I'm not talking about them if anyone goes to listen to them. If you want to listen to Chore, as far as I know, the only way to listen to Chore right now, you have to go to YouTube, type in Chore discography, and go down a little bit to the Yellow album, where it's like a cat with a halo. They got everything that they ever put out there, all fucking right there, and it's still so good. I mean, it's like, it's noise rock combined with punk, but it's also really melodic. It sounds like Archers of Loaf if they just came from like an angrier place. So good. Chore is so underrated.
Yeah, I agree. I first had moved out to Ypsilanti, and I had been playing in bands, but I don't think, we were playing shows yet. So I was going to a lot of like the basement shows and like Cross Street Station, and stuff like that. And yeah, I saw them numerous times. They were great, great energy.
It's awesome.
Just seeing bands, like that in basements is, again, memories,
Yeah, for sure.
I'd probably have to say, just like nostalgia, like Small Brown Bike. Even though they did hit it big, they were signed to Vagrant, I believe, or Vagrant, I believe, or no, Lookout. They were signed to Lookout. Okay.
Oh, really?
And again, it was just like moving to Ypsi and just going to shows every weekend and just Cross Street Station and Blind Pig, and and they were one of those bands that hit it big, big in relation, and
yeah, in the scene, like in the screamo scene.
Yeah, so it could kind of show you this band that we knew, that we talked to all the time, that we play at the same places with. They made it, and Small Brown Bike probably would have to be number 3.
Oh, I think that's a great call. I mean, they're so
influential too. People don't realize that. Like, again, it's musicians, bands. You go to like a lot of like, the Taking Back Sunday type emo screamo, and a lot of them are like, man, Small Brown Bike from Lansing, Michigan. They were so good, and they were really good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they fit right in with the hot water music and all that kind of stuff that was coming out at the time, and somehow didn't get quite the level of attention, but as good as all that stuff for sure. My number 2, Bear vs. Shark. Also made it very big. Bear vs. Shark.
Shit, I would have forgot about them. Thanks for bringing them up.
Yeah.
God damn.
They're playing with Heads Will Roll in December.
Yeah,
really
they're so good too from back in the day, man. Blind Pig in the day, man.
Yep. And Bear vs. Shark is just like, they're the band that like I wished the band that I was in would be like them, It's very like Mark Paffy's stage presence was always so impressive.
He was someone to look to, like as a local guy, be like, okay, I need to step up my game, being a front man.
Yeah, and the whole band, I mean, John Gavilio is just so incredibly talented, and all those guys, just really, really solid musicians and creating music that, I grew up with them, so I was like, I kind of took it for granted, and then like I knew that they got popular, and then I moved to Philadelphia like 10 years later, and I learned that like Yeah, I knew they were on Equal Vision. I knew that people liked them, but then I started like talking to a bunch of Philadelphians who loved them.
Yeah.
And then I saw them in Philadelphia, and they had like a huge turnout, and they were like, people were like walking up the street, and be like, oh, Mark Paffy and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I kind of like didn't realize just how big they actually are, and still are. Like, they're still really beloved, which is great.
They are. Now I'm just going to be some homers and not go with like some bands who hit it just because, and they probably should have. Number 2 has to be Drop Jaw. Just because the shows and just like, I loved them so much, man. Their energy and just like, they sounded like Grade, you know what I mean? And I loved Grade, you know, Under the Influence. I love that album. There was like emo and screamo, but he was like shouting all the lyrics, you know. He wasn't singing at all, trying to sound pretty. He wasn't like American Idol emo, you know, which is like, you know, a classical singer, you know. He was like shouting at you, and like, they were so good, you know. The shows were so awesome. They always had the best looking girls there. You know, you got to talk shit about, you know, Eric and his $200 haircut, you know, I mean, back in the day, but like, they always had good looking girls there, which was a great show, you know, when you're that age.
I remember the name, but I never listened to them. I'll have to check them out.
They're good. I don't know if they're on Spotify.
On YouTube, maybe. If they're not on Spotify, maybe they'll be like Chore and be on YouTube.
Maybe.
My number 1 is also not on Spotify, but you can find them on YouTube. They had 2 albums and a live album, and they're probably the band I've seen most in my life. Me and my friends used to follow the Parka Kings around Michigan like they were the fucking Grateful Dead.
We go straight away, because we're tired of waiting, and we speak, so get better, and misjudge your limits, the race too far, and now you're in the bathroom stall, passed out on your stool at the bar.
They're different kind of ska, because they're ska, but they were always like this weird kind of R&B, like chill ska. Like, they just had such a different kind of feel to them compared to what I was used to in that genre. And where, like, I was making fun of Real Big Fish earlier, like, there's not a lot of ska that I can go back and listen to now, but every time I put the Parka Kings on, it's a double whammy. Again, the nostalgia and the actually being good, because their music is just elevated in the genre. It's just something that is just significantly more serious and also like party music at the same time. But also, me and my friends, like, to us, listening to Parka Kings and seeing them live at the 432 in Flint in particular, we just went everywhere we could to see them, and just got to the point where, like, we'd recognize them if they walked by us, that kind of stuff. They were like local celebrities to us, and nobody knew them outside of Chicago and Detroit. But the Parka Kings are solid gold in my book.
Right on. All right, number 1, I'm not going to say Coke Dick Motorcycle Awesome.
You're not?
No,
I'm amazed. I thought you were.
I'm not going to say Coke Dick Motorcycle. So number 1 is a band who's still around, so like, we'll give them some love. It's Touch the Clouds. They're from the Detroit area. They're from back in the Small Brown Bike days. There was a band called Few and Far Between, and
I remember that.
and there was a band called Lovesick. Nikki, the bassist, they, you know, Saturday Looks Good to Me, you know, from back from the Ann Arbor scene. They're in that band, and Brian from Suburban Delinquents.
Oh,
They're a band right now, and they've been around for probably 15 years or so, but just a hodgepodge of like local, post-hardcore, legends that they play kind of like atmospheric, post-hardcore, post-rock type atmospheric stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good. Really good band.
I'm so glad you brought them up because I hadn't heard of them, but I'm familiar with all those bands that they're from back in the day.
Travis from Small Brown Bike has colon cancer, and we're doing a benefit for him in Lansing on November 17th at the Avenue, and Touch the Clouds are playing, and Suburban Delinquents is also playing.
Oh.
And the Cold Joys, who are members of Kid Brother Collective, they're playing, and
okay.
It's going to be a great show for Travis.
That is awesome. I think this will probably come out shortly after that.
Okay.
But I hope it goes well, and if I can come, I will. It's not on a weekday, is it?
No, it's a weekend. It's a weekend.
Okay.
I booked the show, so I made sure.
Smart man. Smart man. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me to be able to come out and make the time for me on this Sunday morning and talk about this shit with me.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you for listening to me and Dustin gush and even criticize a little bit the album Chrome from the Catherine Wheel. Or is it just Catherine Wheel? I've been saying the Catherine Wheel for a long time, but in doing some research for this, I guess it's just Catherine Wheel? Whatever. That band. Very much appreciate Dustin coming on. He knows his shit. But you don't have to be an aficionado on local or any other kind of music to come on the show. Anybody's welcome on the show. All you have to do is love an album. It's from 93, 94. And reach out to me at 9394podcast@gmail.com. And let me know that you want to come on the show. If you're trying to think of an album to do, we've been talking about Michigan bands here, local bands here. In 1993, Michigan's own Majesty Crush released the album Love 15. And it included this classic song, Number One Fan. There's other good songs on this album too. Really underrated album. Again, kind of shoegazy a little bit. Very breathy and like fuzzy rock. So good. Even if you don't want to come on the show and talk about this album, you should listen to this album. But yes, you're very welcome to come on the show and talk about any album you want from 93, 94. Let me know. Please do review the show, rate the show, rank the show, subscribe, follow, do all those things. It helps. It helps me. Okay, thank you. Take care. '93, '94, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.